The relationship between Caitlin Clark and head coach Stephanie White has quietly become one of the most fascinating storylines in the WNBA and around the Indiana Fever. It's not drama in the classic sense. It's not a soap opera or an open feud. It's something much more real and much more interesting. A genuine, high-level basketball disagreement between a generational player and a proven coach, built on respect, tested by pressure, and still very much evolving in front of the entire league. When Stephanie White was hired, the reaction inside the Fever organization and across WNBA media was overwhelmingly positive. Reports were that Caitlin Clark was thrilled with the move. White called several Clark's games back in her Iowa days, understood the buzz, and came in saying all the right things about coaching the Fever and maximizing Clark's impact. From day one, the message was clear. This was going to be Caitlin's team, and White was fully on board with that. The foundation was respect, excitement, and the idea that together they could turn Indiana into a long-term contender. But very early in the season, you could already see the outlines of a real basketball debate forming. It wasn't shouting on the sidelines, and it wasn't personal. It was about philosophy, about how a team built around Caitlin Clark should actually function at the WNBA level. White wanted structure, balance, and an offense that didn't depend on one player dominating the ball on every possession. Clark, meanwhile, has always believed that she's at her absolute best when she's the primary decision maker, running every action with the ball in her hands. That's who she was at Iowa. That's what made her a national sensation, and that's what she still firmly believes. The clearest moment where that divide surfaced publicly came when Clark was working her way back from one of her early season injuries. She was asked on national television about her role, about sharing the floor with another guard, and how she was adjusting to what the coaching staff was asking from her. She acknowledged exactly what Stephanie White had been emphasizing: being a better screener, moving without the ball, playing off it more often to help the offense flow. She repeated those talking points, and you could tell she understood them. But then she added, in a calm but unmistakably firm tone, "I'm at my best with the ball in my hands." That line hit differently. It wasn't confrontational, but it was direct. It clearly stated how she sees herself, and by extension, how she believes the Indiana Fever should play. To longtime observers, that moment didn't come out of nowhere. Even before that, around an early matchup with the New York Liberty, you could sense that the two sides were still trying to align their visions. White talked about getting Caitlin some possessions off the ball to preserve her legs and open the floor. Clark, while respectful, kept circling back to the same core idea. She feels most dangerous and most impactful when she's initiating the offense. None of this sounded angry. Both sides were measured, but it did underline that this wasn't just about a few sets or a small tweak. This was a real conversation about what Caitlin Clark, the WNBA player, is supposed to be in today's media climate. You already know what happened next. That subtle difference in philosophy got magnified into a full-blown narrative. Social media, talk shows, and even some national coverage framed it as Stephanie White trying to change or even limit Caitlin Clark's game. Every answer from White about Kelsey Mitchell's importance, every quote about team concepts or off-ball movement was instantly scanned for hidden messages about Clark. At one point, White made completely normal, logical comments about how crucial Kelsey Mitchell was for Fever and how badly they wanted to re-sign her. For some fans, that alone became proof that White didn't see Clark as a singular centerpiece. The reality was far more balanced, but the perception kept shifting toward tension. While all of that noise was swirling, the actual basketball story on the floor was just as complex. Even when Caitlin Clark was clearly not at 100% because of her ankle, the Indiana Fever began to look more and more organized. For a short stretch before her season-ending groin injury, they started stacking wins and, more importantly, looked like a cohesive, disciplined team. The offense had flow. The defense had buy-in. They looked like a group beginning to trust both the system and each other. Clark, even while struggling to shoot and move the way she's used to, was still making plays, still competing, and still trying to adjust to what White wanted. Then came the real twist in this story. With Clark sidelined, the Fever didn't crumble. They responded. They kept winning games. They looked like a machine at times, a true WNBA team that could execute even without its biggest star on the floor. Different players stepped up. Kelsey Mitchell reminded everyone she's an elite scorer in this league. The ball moved, the defense tightened, and Stephanie White quietly, but very clearly, proved she's a high-level coach who can build a system and get the most out of a roster, even under heavy spotlight pressure. Clark, from the sideline, publicly celebrated what her teammates were doing and highlighted White's leadership. That's not the behavior of a star at war with her coach. That's a player who still sees herself as connected to the larger project. To really understand this dynamic, you have to understand Caitlin Clark's mindset. This is a player who, going back to Iowa, never shied away from speaking honestly about her game. She once compared some of her deep, audacious three-pointers to the way Steph Curry plays, saying you don't tell Steph not to take those shots. That wasn't arrogance. It was conviction. It told you everything about how she views her own instincts and her own freedom on the court. Her college coaches Lisa Blutter and Jan Jensen often talked about how fiercely competitive she was, to the point where even they had to work extra hard to get through to her at times. People around the game have compared that mentality to echoes of Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant. A relentless, sometimes stubborn drive to win on her own terms. Now, put that mindset next to Stephanie White's approach. White has never tried to hide who she is as a coach. On Sue Bird's Bird's Eye View podcast, she laid out directly. She called it really important to build a genuine relationship with Caitlin Clark, saying that connecting and building trust was her number one priority. She made it absolutely clear. In her eyes, Clark is a centerpiece of everything that we do, not just from a basketball standpoint, but also as the face of the Indiana Fever and a major driver of WNBA interest and business. That line alone should have silenced a lot of the speculation that she didn't fully buy into Clark's star power. But White didn't stop there, and this is where the real coaching philosophy comes in. In the same conversation, she added something that defines how she leads. She believes you have to coach and challenge your best players the most. That's her non-negotiable. Being the centerpiece does not mean you are above coaching. If anything, it means you should expect to be pushed harder than everyone else. That message was clearly directed at Clark, but also at the entire locker room and the wider WNBA audience watching the story unfold. White also talked about being very honest and transparent, stressing that she doesn't like games, doesn't like guessing, and expect her players to ask direct questions if they're unsure about something. No politics, no mind games, just straight basketball and accountability. The comment from White that really caught people's attention was when she said she and Caitlin share the same kind of psycho-competitiveness. It was half joking, but very real. White was a fiery player herself and has never lost that edge. What she was saying there is that she understands Clark at a deeper level because she's wired in a similar way. They both obsess over winning. They both demand a lot from themselves and the people around them. Their competitive streak might come out in different forms. Clark in her swagger and shot making, White in her system and standards, but the core is the same. That's not a clash of personalities. That's two ultra-competitive people trying to find a middle ground on how to win at the highest level. Of course, everything White is asking from Clark requires real adjustment. White has been consistent about the areas where she wants to see growth. Off-ball movement, screening with purpose, becoming an even more dangerous catch-and-shoot threat, and understanding when to give up the ball to get it back in even better spots. None of that means taking away what makes Caitlin Clark special. In fact, in a WNBA that's full of elite defenders and deep scouting, those added layers are exactly what can extend her dominance over the long term. But from Clark's perspective, when she says, "I'm at my best with the ball in my hands," she's not just making a casual remark. She's defending the style of play that turned her into one of the faces of women's basketball. It's important to remember, this on-court partnership never got a real, uninterrupted runway to develop. Clark dealt with multiple injuries, a nagging ankle issue followed by the groin injury that ultimately ended her season. Every time they seemed close to building some real continuity, something knocked them off track. We only got flashes of what a fully healthy Caitlin Clark could look like in a system that fully incorporates White's concepts. There were stretches where you could see both philosophies blending. Clark still orchestrating a lot of the action, but also coming off pin downs, relocating, and punishing defenses who try to overload on her initial touch. Those brief windows are what make this such a compelling question going forward. Meanwhile, the Fever's success without Clark did something very important for the future of this team. It proved that the Indiana Fever are not a one-woman show. It showed that with Stephanie White's system in place, with Kelsey Mitchell, Ari McDonald, Erica Wheeler, and others stepping up, this roster can execute and win games in the WNBA even when their superstar is not dominating the ball or not on the floor at all. That matters for two reasons. First, for Clark, it reinforces the idea that trusting her teammates in the system doesn't mean shrinking her role. It means expanding what the team can be around her. Second, for the rest of the Fever, it builds a belief that they are not just Caitlin and everybody else. They know now through experience that they can deliver. Underneath all the public back and forth, one thing has quietly become clear. There's real trust forming between Clark and White. Caitlin has gone out of her way at times to praise White publicly, including during those winning stretches when she was out injured. That's not something you fake for the cameras. White, on her side, keeps emphasizing how much she admires the way Clark has handled the incredible pressure and attention that came with her jump to the WNBA. She's been vocal about not knowing how she herself would have handled that at 22. When a coach talks that way about a player, and a player publicly supports that coach during adversity, you're looking at something deeper than a simple coach versus star narrative. This season, with all its twists, Clark's adjustment to the pro game, the injuries, the national spotlight, the speculation around Stephanie White's comments, ended up being a giant stress test for both of them. And in many ways, both came out of it stronger. White proved she can coach at a very high level, manage the noise, and still build a winning culture. Clark proved that even when she's not physically at her best, and even when she's being asked to adapt, she can still compete, still lead, and still command the attention of the entire basketball world. That's not a failed partnership. That's phase one of a very challenging, very public learning process for both star and coach. Looking ahead, the stakes couldn't be higher for the Indiana Fever, for Caitlin Clark's WNBA career, and for Stephanie White's long-term legacy as a head coach. The Fever have the ingredients to build something special: a generational offensive talent in Clark, established scorers like Kelsey Mitchell, a coach in White who has already shown she can win, and a league in the WNBA that is growing in interest, ratings, and competition every single year. The question is whether Clark's deep belief in having the ball in her hands and White's equally strong belief in a balanced, system-driven offense can fully converge. If they can meet in the middle, if Caitlin Clark embraces the off-ball growth White is pushing for without losing the freedom and flair that made her a star, and if White continues to build around Clark's unique gifts while still holding her to the highest standard, then the Indiana Fever are absolutely capable of becoming a long-term force in the WNBA. If not, if neither side bends, then this will remain one of the most fascinating and closely watched dynamics in professional basketball. What we know right now is simple. They like each other, they respect each other, and they both desperately want to win. They share that psycho competitiveness Stephanie White joked about, and they're operating under a brighter spotlight than almost any coach-player duo in the league. Whether this turns into the foundation of a WNBA dynasty or remains a long-running tug-of-war between philosophy and freedom is a storyline to watch. Either way, the Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White dynamic is going to shape not only the future of the Indiana Fever, but a big part of the future of the WNBA itself.